from New York. Live.
There he is. He's beat me to it. He beat me to it, and he was. There you go. Welcome everybody to Live and Uncut. It's one camera, one lens again. Really special guest today. I've had to track this man down. He's most elusive as the Scarlet Pimpernel. It's Serge Ramelli from Paris. Bonjour, Serge.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Paul.
Lovely.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, lovely. It's absolutely superb to have you on. I was thinking of a title for the show. I called it The Editing Maestro, but I thought that gives it away too much. And I put Mesdames et messieurs, and 2 or 3 people sussed out who he was. So absolutely brilliant to have you on. We're going to talk about the we're going to be talking about the editing process at a later stage. But you just told me as we were offline that you're going to be taking the best part of the year, 8 months in LA, or
absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us about that before we get stuck into what we're going to talk about today.
It's a long story, but I've always been involved in movie making as an actor and as a producer, and as a bit of a director. I've shot a few short movies. I've played in a couple of shorts. I've done a lot of podcasts and talking to camera, obviously, and I helped produce 2 movies in France a couple of years back, and now I'm starting a movie production company because I met up with a very talented screenwriter, an amazing screenwriter, who wrote actually 3 movies, which I'm helping him to produce all 3, and because I know a bit of people in the movie business in France and a little bit in Hollywood, and one of them I have a pretty important role. Actually, I'm actually playing in one of the 3 movies. So that's pretty exciting. That's one of the reason That's one of the main reason why I'm going to be spending a lot of time in LA for the next 8 months. Plus, also I want to shoot a lot in the U.S. I've always dreamed to do Yellowstone. I have more books coming out. Right now, movies is more like a hobby thing, and I still have a lot. I've got lots of books and tutorials coming out where I want to have a lot of amazing landscape photos. So I'm going to do shooting. I'm going to do a whole book on New York. I'm going to do. Because I'm working with also a pretty nice editor who is now making a book on Paris, and he wants me one on New York and one on Venice. Anyway, so lots of shooting, lots of tutorials, a lot of courses to prepare in the U.S. and this Hollywood thing. Plus my kids always wanted to go to Hollywood, so we had an opportunity there with some friends, and so we are taking it.
Go for it, as they say. And will this give you an opportunity to work with Scott Kelby as well, or is that just?
Scott is a friend, and I've done a few shows with him. So I hope he will. I hope to do maybe some stuff for KB1, and at least do some shows with him and go to For Shop World and Pro. Scott has been really my mentor for many years, so I owe him a lot.
Great presenter. I love his shows. Yeah, he's. I've loved watching The Grid show with him and Matt Kosklowski or RC. They're absolutely superb. But that's the future for you then.
Huh?
That's the future for you lined up.
Yeah, that's my future. Absolutely. I'm happy to. I love the idea of. I love the U.S. and I love Paris. Yeah. I love the idea of both. Being both. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Paris, also doing workshops, taking photos of Paris. I love to. The kids are big now, so I can travel a lot. And right now, I'm signing with an editor for 7 books of all over the world.
Fantastic.
Pictures everywhere. So I got a lot of traveling planned ahead of me with my wife.
You're like Valerie Jardin. You're living the dream of photography.
Yeah. Honestly, it took a few years, but I can say now I'm living the dream of photography. Yes, definitely.
Well, that's a very good segue. It took you a few years because the thing that I really liked when I saw you in an interview once with one of your colleagues where someone had sent some questions into you, and it was about how you started your career off, and I was really impressed by the way it sort of started for you, because I think this is one thing which a lot of people that want to turn professional in photography don't think about the groundwork that they've got to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, Serge, I'd like you to just talk us through that, because there's so much groundwork that you put together. You obviously put up with that infamous word "no," which everyone hates to hear.
Yeah.
Tell us about how it got started with your. It's
Sure.
interior photography of the hotels, wasn't it?
Yeah, from the year 2005 to 2010, I missed most of my revenue from interior design photography. The way I started, the thing is, photographers usually are not salesmen. Now, I've been a salesman from the age of 14 actually, till I became a photographer. So I have lots of experience in sales, which I think really helped me going because I have a lot of friends which are very talented photographers and sometimes don't make money because they're not willing to make the background work, as you say, to get started. So the way I started was, we live in a world where people need photos all the time. Now, my question was, who really needs photos in a way that its income depends upon? And what I found to be the best of the best of the best is hotels. The reason is, hotels makes, and it's been true like this for the last 4 or 5 years, the entire income from Booking.com, Expedia.com, their websites, and it's all based on photos. So I know that, and I know for experience, and I can tell you a couple of stories. Like I've had hotels where I've shot for them, and they were making, like, I remember one hotel in Paris was making like 25,000 euros of online booking per month. And I changed his photos. I made new photos for him using my techniques, and he went to $100,000 per month of income from internet.
Wow!
Just like boom, and stopped all the bad contracts he had, and only kept the best one from the web. Because a lot of hotels, all the hotels in Paris are always full, but they have some very old contracts with guides, and which are like where they don't sell the room for more. Where they usually sell the room for more is on their own website, number one, but also on Booking.com and stuff. And what's going to make the difference is the quality of the photos. Of course, you cannot lie, but when you take a brochure to go somewhere on holidays, you will see the best beach, the nice girl, and the cocktail. So, people know that the brochure is always the nicest photo. So you at least have to be at that level. Okay, so once I understood that, I started calling hotels, and I made a game which was very simple. I would make a list. I would take the yellow pages and call 50 hotels, and what I would do is not go to lunch, not go to the bathroom, not do anything until I've made these 50 phone calls. So I would take a white sheet of paper and make a line every time I would call a hotel. Now, let's say that the phone was not right. Well, that still would be a line. Let's say the receptionist says, no, we don't need you, and hangs up. That's still one line. It had to be 50 phone calls. And but that really is how I started, because what happened is, out of these 50 phone calls, all I was saying is, hi, I'm a photographer. I know, and so I would always push their marketing, like, I know that if you've got better photos, you will get more money from your own website, Booking.com, Expedia.com. I know of hotels which have doubled their traffic because they've improved their photography. I use the top of the line of today's technology, the best cameras, the best software. Not to lie, but to make the best. I've watched some of your photos. Usually I would look at their photos. And honestly, what happens is, most of the time I would not speak to anybody who would be responsible, who has an authority to even listen to me. So, but here's the statistics. Out of 50 people, I would talk to about 13 managers. So 33 out of 50 was people telling me, I'm sorry, the manager's not here. I'm sorry, the manager's not here. Out of 50 people, I had that 33 times, right? 37 times. And 13 times I did speak to the manager. Out of the 13 manager I was speaking to, I had always 3 appointments, and out of the 3 appointments, I was making at least 2 sales. So, and it would take me about 3.5 hours to make the 50 phone calls. So, 50 phone calls equals 2 sales. A sale, it was about 2,000 euros for me, 1,500 euros. So, I could potentially make 3,000 euros of photographic sales in 2 hours, 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
All it took was daring to make 50 phone calls. That's all it took.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one aspect. There is another aspect I must mention, which is really important, is before you can do that, you have to be able to produce high quality photos. And why? I'll give you an example. a lot of people, it's less true today than it was 5 years, 10 years ago. But when I got in the business in 2005, I was against people which were old photographers still working on film. A lot of people still working on films in 2005 because they've been doing it for so many, they didn't change. Or if they were not working on the film, they were shooting JPEG, not even RAW. And I was all about like RAW files, Lightroom, doing ray lights, radio filters, and all these effects that we can do today. And so I remember once I had there was a hotel guy who just came up with a beautiful 4-star hotel at the top of the Champs-Élysées in Paris, one of the biggest avenue, very, very fancy hotel. And he wanted to get the best photos possible. And he knew me, and so he says, you know what? And that I just had started into the business, but I was mastering Lightroom and Photoshop pretty well. And he says, I'm going to take 5 photographers and give them one room, and the one who takes the best photos wins the show. And I did an HDR on that room. It's actually the only time in my life I did HDR on interior design. Anyways, but it was the hotel theme was organic. It was an organic hotel. Like every materials that was used was very natural, wood, stones. Like it looked like caverns, but it was like a 4-star hotel anyway. A very special concept. So I took the HDR. So my photos look completely different than the 4 other guys. And I won all the thing, and I ended up getting the whole deal, which was like €5,000. No, 5,000 euros, like $7,000. So 2 things to say. 1, you got to dare to make the phone calls, and 2, you got to be able to produce good photos. So you have to have, you don't jump in there until you. So what I tell people is, at first, when you want to get started, just call up hotel and says, I'm willing to do. Can I do a room for free? Everybody will accept that. And you go there and you train. You shoot some. You just go into the nicest hotels in your area and you take a couple. And so you have a website to show with some of your best work. Then you have to master Photoshop and Lightroom. And then when you're ready, you can do the phone call thing. And then you're good to go.
Away you go. Yeah, fantastic tutorial, free of charge.
Yeah,
starting your photography business.
And just one thing I might add. I had a friend, which I would say his name, named David Emmanuel Cohen. He's a very talented photographer. He called me up about 3 years ago. He's very talented, but he was really, I know he was going out of work. Like he hardly could pay his rent. And I told him that story I just told you, the exact same way I just told it to you. And I said, give it a try. Give it a try. You know what?
Nothing to lose.
He made it 3 times. 3 times he did this whole thing. He actually got like 3, 4. And from what I know, he never had to do it again. Because honestly, this 50 phone call thing, you probably have to do it 4 times. By then, you would have, if you're good with 50, it could be, I mean, it can be, it doesn't have to be hotels, it can be restaurants. Of course, if you live in an area where there's no hotels, no restaurants, no business, it's kind of rough. Restaurants don't fill the restaurants with their website. They just don't. So they have a less necessity of having good photos. Hotels do. Hotel is the number 1 type of work that needs beautiful photos. Number 1. For them, it's gold. Like they're ready to pay anything for a good photo. I know a hotel girl, for a 30-room in Paris, she paid $23,000 for a shoot for her brochure. Wow. $23,000. That was a bit crazy. The average price is more like $2,000-3,000. Up to $5. It goes anywhere from a.
But you're right. But you're right, because I'm fortunate in my line of business where I travel Europe. I'm booking my hotels through Expedia or Booking.com or Hotels.com or that sort of thing. And the first thing you do is you want to see what the rooms look like. You want to see a smart room. And as you say, we know that the photos are enhanced. I'm not going to say doctors, the wrong word. They're enhanced to show the pleasant surroundings that you're going to be living in, even if it's overnight. So you want to be staying somewhere from decent. And hats off to you, basically, Serge, where you just took the bull by the horns and you weren't worried about hearing the word no thank you. It was the next
which
one.
I had 37 times out of 50. You will get
exactly.
Most exactly. It's a quantity thing.
But you see, once you've got one successful, or let's say you've got 3 successful hotels on your books, those others that you called before, your name will then get about. So the next time you maybe call those guys, they're going to say, oh yeah, we know Serge, come in and take some photographs for us. You don't have to sell it.
Yeah.
The selling is done on your website, isn't it?
Honestly,
How was the photograph situation with you? Were they your copyright or were they with the hotel?
No, that's how I work. When I do a shoot for a hotel, I mean, they always there is a law in France where when you create a photo or song, it's always linked to you. It always belongs to you. However,
belongs to you, yeah.
You give usage rights, and that's what I do. I give all the rights, like press, brochure, because in the past, some hotels have some issues where photographers would don't say, okay, you can only use it for your website, then you have to pay extra for this and for that. I prefer to say it a bit more, and I use it as a marketing thing. It's a bit more expensive than usually, but you have all the rights for everything.
You have all the rights. And in a roundabout way, it's what you do with your raw files when you're doing your tutorials on YouTube. You very graciously say to anyone, as long as you're part of my newsletter outlet, you've got access to download all the raw files. So switching from the hotels and the interior, was landscape photography always a passion of yours, or did you move into landscape photography after the hotels?
I was good for living interior design and getting out of the hotels and shooting Paris right down the street as a hobby, as a passion. Yeah. And a crazy passion. It was taking me. I still do today. I still spend about 15 hours per week shooting, just for fun.
And because this is where the basis of your show now comes to the fore, really, where you've gone through that process of learning very, very extensively, I might add, the way Photoshop worked, and now we've got Lightroom on board, and now, of course, you're adapting in your show all this numerous plugins that are available to us. There isn't a week that you go by that I don't think you bring a new one to the game, and I think, oh, hold on.
Well, I've been mainly on Topaz and MacFun, not that much.
Exactly. Yeah, but what about Nik software and?
Nik software too. Yeah, I'm a fan of. I use Nik. Historically, I've always used Nik software at first. Yeah. Then I discovered Topaz, which I really like. And now I discovered MacFun, which I really like. MacFun is, honestly, I think it's some of the best out there. And and I just, you were asking me, how did you find out about them? Well, I read Photoshop User Magazine every month. Yeah. Which is produced by Scott Kelby, and there were ads there. I actually check out every plugin I can get my hand to, because I'm always looking for, I'm making a show twice a week on retouching, so I want to be in the know of what's going on out there, and so I every time a plugin comes out, I can get my hand on it. I give it a try, and sometimes I'm really impressed, and sometimes I'm not. And MacFun, I was really impressed, honestly. And I use MacFun as my workflow. I just got. I'm really happy because I just got. I'm going to work with one of the biggest galleries in the world on selling fine arts photography. It's got 84 galleries all over the world. And they just ordered me 13 photos. It's starting on the 12th of September in Paris. I'm going to be in the Louvre, like close to the Louvre, something I've been wanting to do for 10 years. Fantastic. And some of it's just black and white, and on most of the black and whites that I've given for this, at least on the latest one, I've used Tonality Pro, which is the MacFun black and white plugin, to make the big prints that's going to be in the galleries. So I am really truly using that stuff, and it's really actually, that MacFun is the guys from Nik Software. They sold the company to Google and they created MacFun.
I knew I'd heard the name somewhere before. I think Frederick Van Johnson mentioned it on a show, and now the penny drops. Yeah, the penny drops. I'll tell you what I'd like to do now, something which I didn't prep you on before and I forgot, so apologies for that. Shall we go to screen share and look at your website?
Yeah, why not? Why don't you go to...
I'll go to screen share here.
Okay. Well, I've got 4 websites. So you've got the one with the tutorials on, and if you want to see my work,
I've gone to SergeRamelliPhotos.com.
Okay, that's more like a portfolio thing. Okay, cool, no problem.
Yeah, go to that one. So let me just start that out, because I think what I'd like to do here, Serge, is let's just talk through some images.
Sure.
First, and because I very much doubt it, but if there are any viewers out there that haven't seen Serge's work, look out! Your eyes are going to pop out of your head. Can you see that, Serge? It's the Eiffel Tower. If you didn't know,
that's the Eiffel Tower. That's
beautiful tower.
Yeah, I love that shot.
We've got one very similar to this in our country, but it's a little bit smaller and it's in Blackpool. But
yeah.
So anyway, talk us through this one because this has got beautiful tones and tell us.
Well, this one is pretty heavily retouched. I had a great sky, but I completely changed the colors to make this sort of a blue to purple type of color. But I don't know, it was an accident. I was like playing around with presets, and it just came out like that. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I just love that shot.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I really like it. It's not my favorite. There's one which I think is a bit further down, which is a black and white, which is a bit unusual. This one is my favorite of the Eiffel Tower.
I saw you do this in the show where you just built it up and built it and built it, and it was just amazing how you got the colors, you introduced color and the tonality. Yeah, this one's also, I mean,
I changed a bit. My earlier work, this is one of my first work, like 2007, 2008, is very retouched. Like this one, I changed the sky, I added clouds.
Yeah.
There's maybe a bit of HDR going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. And as I grew as a photographer, I tried to go for natural result. That's one of the reasons we'll talk about that. I went for the Sony A7R.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, this was heavily retouched, but I loved it. I love that photo. Yeah. I really love it.
It's an absolute cracker. It's just.
I love the colors. I get emotion every time I see it. I don't know why. I know.
Yeah. This one. I saw this program. Well, I've watched all your programs, to be honest with you. But this one, I remember how you built this up, and it was just as it was going on, because I knew what the final image was, and then you showed us the beginning. And I'm thinking, I was like, how did he do that? And then of course you just built it, and it's.
There is a very funny story about this one, if I may, which is really interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I shot this not with the Sony A7R, not with a 5D Mark II, not Mark I. I shot this with a Canon S90, which is like a point-and-shoot, very small camera.
Yeah.
I was walking around, and there was no one there, which is very rare. And it was the widest angle that I had, because I don't know, I guess it goes to about 20 or 22 millimeter. It was not wide enough to get that, so I took 4 photos.
Right.
And it was during the day. The sky was completely white. I added the sky and added the sepia tone and mixed the sepia, half green, just the greens, and it came out like that. I was like, and that's one of my favorite photo ever. And I've sold that photo to banks, actually, for a decent amount of money, I must say. So shot with
a shot with a Canon S90.
Yeah, Canon S90. It's the only one which is on my portfolio.
This is what I want to ask you. Now, you took 4 photos there, and you've obviously Photoshop merged them together.
Right.
What is the final print size of this image now?
Well, it's still got a great resolution. The way I've been selling it is 1.40 m large by about 8 m high, and it's very sharp.
Unbelievable.
1.40 m. I don't know what's that in inch. I'm a meter man.
No, we're basically on the side of those the European size.
Yeah, I know.
1.4 meters and 800 millimeters high. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Amazing quality of detail.
Really good quality, yeah. With a Canon S90, unbelievable.
Amazing. I love this image. I can't remember seeing this one before.
This one I shot with Scott Calby. He was in Paris on holidays. We went together. We're playing the game of shooting the Eiffel Tower with different things people have never seen before. That was our game. And I had this idea of making this panorama, because actually Matt Koslowski, I was there first with Matt the year before, and he took a very similar photo, but he had water everywhere. It was raining a lot, and so he had a very nice reflection of the Eiffel, but he shot it very wide. So the Eiffel Tower was very small, but I had a great reflection on the ground. And I thought, what I did is, instead of doing one photo, that's a very good trick, by the way. Instead of doing one photo with a wide angle and having the Eiffel Tower very small, I said, I have the same framing that Matt has. It's a black and white photo. It's on his portfolio. You can check it out. But on his, Eiffel Tower is very small. So what I did is I went there with like a 50 millimeter or a 35 millimeter, took 3 shots this way, and then did my merge and stuff. This way, this one has hardly got no retouching. It's just the merging. But it's nice because the colors were nice, and I like the idea that we can have this sort of natural frame around the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, like it, love it. Saw you do this one on the show as well. Love the glassy river, absolutely. But this was.
ND
I know
1000.
you did a long exposure on this, and
Yeah.
for the sky and for the river.
And the funny thing,
Absolutely
yeah, the
superb.
funny thing about this photo is that this one is very easy to get because it's on the bridge that every tourist can go on.
Yeah,
The only thing that's special about this
yeah,
photo is that the sunset was amazing that night, amazing.
yeah.
And so with the ND 1000, just created that crazy sky. There's hardly any retouching there.
Okay.
That's why you've got a very strong color cast because that's what the ND 1000 filter does. There's hardly no retouching there.
It's lovely. Now I've cheekily set up a Pinterest site on my site, rather a Pinterest board of images for Serge, and I'm just going to go back and see. There's one I wanted to see. It was this one, which again I watched in the show. You create how you got the detail out of this statue here on the left and maintained everything out was just amazing to me. That the amount of detail that you could get out of the file, from the use of Lightroom and then all the other processes that you created was amazing.
Thank you.
Look at that sky. That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it was a beautiful sky.
Well, you live in one of the cities of the world which is so picturesque. I love Paris.
Oh yeah, Paris is times. Paris. It is. I must say, is a photo. It is a photography heaven, except the weather is like London. Yeah. It's not so hot. So we have about two sunsets per month about, which are nice.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to be there.
Well, you see, my feeling about it when you go to these cities, if you get straight luck and you get those sort of days, they're the pluses. But otherwise, well, I just love the atmosphere of the city. Quite honest with you, and Stockholm is another one of my favourite cities. I don't know whether you've been there at all.
No, I've never been to Stockholm. I've been to Copenhagen, but never to Stockholm.
Yeah, when I went to Stockholm, in actual fact, was the first city I visited with my first digital camera. So it's got a little bit of a sort of a sentimental value to it, and I just couldn't stop taking photographs there. It was really quite an awesome city to visit. So you've mentioned it a couple of times here. I'm intrigued. I've switched to mirrorless as well because I was a Nikon user and I'm now using Fuji. You've switched from Canon to Sony.
Yeah.
And maintaining the full frame, which obviously with your landscape work, full frame is very important to you. Although the argument could be said with the shot of the Montmartre restaurant there with the S90. How important is it to you to have a full frame?
Yeah, full frame is very. The reason why full frame is important, you see, I do two things: interior photography or landscape. Both of them, you need pretty wide angles, and of course, you can always have a 7D, which is not a full frame, and put like a 10-20 on, but then that's your only lens. That's your only lens, and it's not a very high-end lens. If you've got a full frame, you can have like a 20mm, which is actually a 20mm of great quality. The reason why I went to the Sony A7R is very simple. I was gonna go and buy I had the Canon 5D Mark I, then I bought the Canon 5D Mark II, then I bought the 7D, and all the Canon lens you can dream of. And I was gonna buy the Canon 5D Mark III, but I was bored. I was bored because I knew this Canon camera all the time, and I was watching Trey Ratcliffe talking about the Sony A7R, and I just wanted a change in my life. Honestly, it was really like. I shoot about 20 hours per week, and it's Canon stuff. It's very heavy lens, heavy camera. It's very heavy all the time, big bag. And then I saw this website. It's called DxO Mark. I don't know if you know what DxO Mark is.
It's DxO
Mark. The rating of all these sensors, and the Sony A7R sensor was rated number 1 or 2 at the time, and the 5D Mark III was 54. 54. Wow. I was like, what? In picture quality. And it was $1,000 less than the 5D Mark III. And I was literally on the way to buy the 5D Mark III, and I said no. Like in my car, as I was going to the Best Buy type of shop, on the way there, I said no, you know what, I'm going to do a whole new adventure. And I came out with a Sony A7R, and I'm not going back in any way. No. Because I bought the Sony A7R with the 35mm. It is so light. I have it on me all the time. I don't have I have a very small bag. I can show it to you, actually.
Yeah.
So I've got a very small bag, very light,
Yep.
and in here I have my Sony. I have my ND1000 filter that goes with the 35mm, and that's what I use most of the time. I have a little small tripod that goes with it, and I travel a lot. And I walk a lot. So the thing is, not only it's lighter, but when you take a photo, the dynamic range is unheard of. I know a lot of people get bored because I keep saying that. I'm actually in my show, I've been giving raw files from the Sony A7R so people can see for themselves. I was like really amazed. I used to do HDR. I used to do a lot of digital blending, and the raw file out of this camera is so amazing that I only with with a bit of underexposed right into the sun, I get no noise at all, and I can open up the shadows, bring on the highlights, and do anything that I want with just one file. So I'm not here for the post-processing. I'm not here for making muscles while working. With this,
no.
And I get 36 million pixels. And as I do big prints, when I was getting only 22 or 23 with the 5D Mark III. So it's only bonuses for me. It's like I'm not going back. I don't get any commission from Sony for saying that. I know that. Sorry.
I was fortunate enough to go to a Sony presentation. There must have been about 4 years ago now. 3 or 4 years ago, and they just introduced the Next 7, and they were showing off the translucent mirror at the time with their big alpha cameras. And the guy stood up in front of us and said, "I don't want to knock Nikon, and I don't want to knock Canon." He said, "But we have one philosophy with Sony. We will be the #1 camera producer in the world in the next 5 to 7 years." And everyone sort of stepped back and thought, wow, this is a bit of a brash statement to make. And I was very interested at the time in the Next 7, and I picked it up and took some photographs with it, and there the guys were holding exactly the same spec, but with a big SLR camera with the, I forget which it was now, it probably was the Alpha 77, I don't know the exact number. And they kept on looking at me, giving me a bit of a frown, and I kept on thinking, there I was with my Nikon D200 and all the gear, and thinking, can I really switch to the Next 7, have a lighter camera with everything in this small body? Would it in actual fact do the job? I didn't go the Next 7. I in actual fact decided to keep the Nikon and went to the Next 3, which was a mistake because there was no viewfinder, and I got off the boil with Sony at that point. But I came to the same conclusion: too much equipment, bothering and wondering which lens I should be using walking around the city, and that's when I fell in love with the Fuji, and it's a 1.5 crop admittedly, but I'm very pleased. My style of photography, what I'm doing now is I've got the X1 XE1. This is with the 35mm on, which I've just treated myself to. Oh,
and you have an L plate from Really Right Stuff, or?
And I got an L plate from Photo Maddox. That is, and I'm interviewing the guy next couple of weeks' time on that. So I'm looking forward to that one. But it's just I think we're getting to a stage now, Serge, where and I don't understand why Nikon and Canon are so quiet. They must be lost, because Sony have definitely taken the move on them. Now, obviously, with the A7S as well, which is going a stage further. Yeah, you're going to have a camera which is produced, which is going to be mirrorless. They're going to be able to take, well, they can do it on the Panasonic G4, where they can take an image from a frame of movie, a 4K movie, and I don't think there's going to be any requirement for the guys to say, well, I must have fast shutter speed, I must have 7, 8 frames, 10 frames a second. Because I think the sports photographer in the end is going to use that style. He's going to use the videos.
Just take one of the 4K photos.
Exactly right. Exactly. Now, apparently the A7S, as it stands, cannot hold that 4K video in camera. It has to download to a laptop. I think once Sony get that sorted out, as I've blogged, I think we're off to the races. I think the bigger camera industries are going to have to really start thinking about it.
Yeah, I saw this little short movie that Philip Bloom did. Now I see. I don't know if you saw this one about the Sony A7S, where he's like shooting in the night, and it's boosting the ISO, and it's like daylight. It's like, whew, this is a revolution. Yeah, I think Sony came up with a sensor technology that is years ahead of Canon and Nikon. Not Nikon, because actually Nikon, from what I know, is using Sony sensors. Like the D800 and D800E
Sensors.
is actually the same sensor, exact same sensor than the Sony A7R, which is what it says on DxO Stats. They have the exact same rating. So, so Nikon was pretty clever on that, but Canon is a bit behind. I'm afraid. I mean, I love Canon. You know, there are a lot of things that Canon has, which Sony, like for example, I'm not a big fan of the Sony menu. I don't like the way their menu is, but I like they have apps, which is cool. You know, you can download apps. That's kind of cool. What I love about the Sony A7R, it's kind of stupid, but I want to show it to you because it's something. When you take 20 hours of photo a week, it changes your life. You've got the three things you use the most is aperture value, time value. I mean, you know, speed, aperture, and ISO. With a Canon, to change the ISO, you have to press one button and then move a wheel. One button and move a wheel. I change the ISO all the time. On the Canon 7D, it's just that wheel. ISO up and down. That wheel is aperture. That wheel is speed. So I'm never going into the menu, and just that alone is such a time saver for me. I don't know why they added this one button to change the ISO, but that's crazy. Maybe there's a hack around it, you know. Anyways.
Yeah. When I picked up the Fuji for the first time, the thing I liked about it was I had the shutter dial on the top. I got my EV by the thumb there. But the thing that I was really enjoyed about was the fact there was an aperture ring on the lens. And that I thought, now we're getting back to what I term as traditional photography. But this is going. I'm going to be even more. I'm going to be even more sillier than what you said. Do you know the one thing on this camera which I just don't understand why camera manufacturers ever thought about changing it? You can't do this on a weatherproof camera, but I would hasten to add, there's a thread for your shutter release cable. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going Fuji. It's a very, very silly thing, but I thought it was a brilliant idea. So, now we know why you switched to Sony, and I can understand that. The majority of your work starts off in Lightroom.
Yeah.
And now, of course, have you always used Lightroom, or did you tempt to Aperture?
Sorry?
Did you ever use Aperture?
I gave it a couple of tries at Photoshop World. A couple of hours. I gave it a couple of hours, but I was already big time into Lightroom, and I keep hearing people switching from Aperture to Lightroom. So I'm a huge Apple fan, but I knew that it looked like they were not going to invest time in it. Like you know, I heard that it was even being stopped being produced or updated or whatever.
I think what they're doing, they're bringing out Photo. Yeah, iPhoto is now going to be called, I believe, Photo Plus. And Photo Plus is going to be Aperture and iPhoto merged together. So it's going to be interesting to see what that interface and how that works. But I personally think that Apple have got a fair bit of catching up to do there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using Lightroom from #1 version, you know, and I've updated everything on time. I know in and out. I'm an international trainer on Lightroom. So my channel is mostly about Lightroom. So. You know, I'm so used to it that I have no interest going somewhere else. You know, I felt, you know, I was raised with Lightroom in sort of a way. So now I do everything in Lightroom, and I try to avoid Photoshop as much as I can. I would say I spend about 5% of my photos into Photoshop. I can do so much in Lightroom that it's only when I need to make panoramas or erase things. I don't add clouds. Sky replacement is something I don't do anymore on my own work. I do it for tutorials. But not on my own personal work. I would not do a sky replacement for a book or because I have this pride of, you know, going back there until you got the right light, which is something that I grew. I didn't have that at first. At first, I was like, as more creative you could be on retouching that you can think of, adding skies, adding water, adding effects, using filters. And as I grew, I started to hunt the right light. And another story I wanted to tell you about a landscape. One of my second mentor after Scott Cape is a man named Jean-Michel Bertz, a French photographer. He's a black and white artist. He's produced over 8 books on photography, which are international bestsellers, literally international bestsellers everywhere in the world. huge bestseller. His work is being played in some of the highest galleries in the world. And then I was talking to him the other day. He says that 95% of all that work was shot with one lens, 35 millimeter. And I was like, what? Yes. Everything, every book, everything he did was with 35 millimeter. And I said, that's a good. So now what I do is I've got the Sony A7R with one lens, 35 millimeter. This one is a 2.8, amazing, very sharp. And that's if I'm not wide enough, I take 2-3 shots. I don't do so much interior design work these days, but for landscape I'm talking about. I do panels if I need to, but plus, to put a Canon lens on this, it's becoming heavy. You have to put an adapter, which I have. But I find that since I have the Sony, 98% of my thing, of course it doesn't work for portraits, but for landscape, 35 millimeter is beautiful. And
it sends you down to the ground.
Plus, I like the idea of having the handicap of only one lens. You have
this is it.
There you are in the Grand Canyon, and you only have one lens. Okay, you gotta just get the best out of it.
And you've got to use your imagination and your creativity with one lens. And you're not, this is you're a one camera, one lens photographer, Serge. Yeah. You're there. You're there. The reason I came across this one camera, one lens idea was, I was walking around the city one thing. I think in actual fact it may have been Strasbourg, and I had my camera bag on my back, my 7300, my 35, my 50, and I had the 1855 kit lens on the D200. I also had a D50 in there as well, just for a backup. And I thought, and at the end of the day, I was exhausted, totally exhausted. But it took me a long time to realise that out of all the lenses which I had there, the only one which I really used in a significant amount of time was the 1855. It wasn't a great Nikon lens. The kit lens of that version was poor. It did the job. It did the job. Because when it came around to me actually switching to the Fuji, I got the 1855 Fuji kit lens, which in actual fact that's rude calling it a kit lens. It's a 2.8 to 4.
Wow.
And it got to a situation I thought photography's come back to me because I don't have to worry about what lens I'm choosing to use. Okay, now I've invested in a couple of lenses recently because I'm more into street photography and I want to use one camera, one lens when I go out. So whether I choose the 27, the 35, or the zoom is almost going to be something like my travel camera lens. It's going to be on there, gives me the options to switch around. But you've just said exactly. Funny enough, which I was only saying a couple of days ago on a blog. Try and commit yourself to just one camera and one lens and let the creativity work, not have the creativity given to you by the camera and the lens. You use the camera to
because when you've got
creativity, free yourself.
Yeah, one thing that surprised me a lot also with Jean-Michel, when he was doing this book, for example, he was doing the book in New York. He went 2 weeks to New York to make a book, which became a huge bestseller.
Yeah.
And he was at the time was shooting 35mm on film, and he was shooting one photo per day, not 2, not 3, 1 photo per day. One photo per day. 2 photo per day actually. He came down with 30 photos, and after 2 weeks, and I think he went back there for another 2 weeks and got another 30 photo, and that's it. And he had 60 photos, and that was the book. And I worked with him a bit. We were together in Israel. He did a book on Jerusalem, and I was with him for a week.
Yeah.
And he spends the entire day with his eyes looking for one photo, and he only allows himself to take one photo. And when I used to be an interior design photographer, when I would walk into a room, I would take like 40 to 50 photos of that one room to get all the angles, get the best of the best. And at the end of I'm not doing it so much anymore. I turned it over to my son, who now runs the business. I play this game with my son where I tell him, okay, we walk into the room and we have to find 3 photos. And we're only allowed to shoot 3 photos on paid jobs. Like, I'm actually being paid. And it just trains you. You have to, and we've been doing it, and it very successfully. So you spend the time to observe and find the right thing. You can look, but we were only allowed to play 3 times per room. And we had to get the customer very happy. And it worked really well. Because I think if you're depending too much on your gear or taking lots of shots, you're losing control. You're taking out your artistic abilities, toward the electronics, which is not good.
Quite right. quite right. I was when I was talking to, I don't know, you familiar with Rincy Ruiz at all? He's from Los Angeles, a street photographer.
Yeah, the name.
Rincy Ruiz, you'll bump into him out there. He's always LA downtown and all that business. He's quite a prolific street photographer out there. And he, in actual fact, said on my show, he said he'll go out, he'll shoot probably 20 to 30 images on a street walk. And I was amazed because I'm fortunate. Exactly, I'm still in the school at the moment as I'm learning my street photography of shooting 100, 120 when I go out. I'm trying desperately to get back to the old days where you only had 36 exposures on your roll of film.
Yeah.
And you had to slow yourself down and make sure you got the right image, which is exactly what you're doing with that little game with you play with your son, that's a great idea. I love that. That's absolutely superb. Let's talk about what are we doing for time. We're okay for time. Let's talk about your show, which is really, really important to you. It's a fantastic show. How many you've done? 100 and how many shows is it now?
52, 53 shows about.
52 or 53 shows, yeah. I was thinking of something else. So, all started your passion of developing the image using your using the plugins and the post processing that are available to you. This really has now become a major facet of Serge Ramelli, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it has, because basically I love to travel, and I travel a lot, and it costs money to travel. And what I do is I do this free show twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays on Lightroom, and I actually give free the raw files. And I have a lot of course sales, which are which people can buy or cannot buy. It's their choice. Of course, you get more if you pay than for the free stuff. So a very small percentage of people actually do buy my courses. But that small percentage of people buying the courses gives me the finance to live and to be able to live the dream of taking photos all over the world. And so, so it's become my business model. I do that free show. I give a lot of free stuff. 90% is free, 10% is being paid, but that 10% I can make an honest living with. So yeah, that's that. So I turned over the interior design job to my son, and all I do now is travel the world and take photos and share with the world how I took the photos. You know, it's literally almost on a day. Like, for example, I would shoot over the weekend, and the next 2 shows will be on what I did over the weekend. You know, or experiment that I do. You know. Yes. And I like that life because I don't have office hours. I travel over the world, you know. I see beautiful things, and so I do these long courses. You know, I have like full courses on how to use Lightroom, full courses on exposure, on interior design. You know, which I spent quite some time, and I've got great reviews on it. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And so and I promote it through my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've just gone onto your YouTube channel. At the moment, it says 152. Programs, but I get the impression there's probably 2 or 3 ready to come out. Yeah, 152.
Yeah, I'm starting 153, and what's crazy is that I got now 172,000 subscribers or something. I just passed 170,000, making it, from what I know, the biggest one on Lightroom on the planet. On that subject, Lightroom, compared to the official, there is an official Lightroom podcast from Adobe, which is a bit under that. And so I'm really happy because it's you know, I get about 60 to 100 emails a day from people, so it's a bit overwhelming also sometimes because you know, when you have so much people following you, and but I love it. I love the interaction with people. I have had a lot of people, you know, with my tutorials who actually stopped their job and became professional photographers. A lot of stories like that. And
fantastic.
And I think there's nothing more important in life to do what you really like, because, you know, as Steve Jobs used to say, I was really inspired by that myself. He says, you know, find what you really like to do what you really like to do, and you'll do good because you will do it with your own heart. And when I've had a friend who was a cop for many years and just dreamed about being a photographer, and through my tutorials he became a photographer. And now he's not a cop anymore. I'm nothing against the cops, but he's a lot more happier now as being a photographer. He does fashion photography, nothing, but he became pretty good at that. And I've had a few stories like that. And when people write me,
just a quick segue on that. Have you ever got tempted to be involved with fashion photography or portrait photography? Is it?
No, the only portraits that I like is, I don't like fashion photography. I don't like studio photography. I don't have affinity for it. I don't look in, you know, beautiful model magazines. I don't have what I like, though, the one thing I like the one person I'd love to be when I grew up is Eric Almas. He's a Norwegian photographer in San Francisco. For me, he's the top of the top, and he makes his portraits. I call that environmental portrait. It's a mixture between a landscape and a portrait, and that is what I want to achieve. Is like one photo where you have one person who is really, you know, it doesn't have to be a model. Actually, most of Eric's stuff is sometimes like old people, or, you know, it's not necessarily model, but it's a great portrait and it's a great landscape. And so I have been doing it, but through compositing, and he's been doing it through actually live shoots or even compositing. He's used both techniques, and that's what I want to grow up to as a photographer, to make. So it could be considered in a way studio photography, but you see, it's got to be a stunning landscape in the same time. So it's not really what magazines are looking for. I don't think so. It's more like a movie theater. This
is a question that I asked Karen Hutton a couple of weeks ago. Do you take the photograph what you see, or do you take the photograph of, how can I put this, how you would like to see it? In other words, obviously when you take a photograph, there may be, we've probably touched on it earlier on, there may be a bit of a bland sky, and you think, no, I can enhance that. So are you, when you're looking at a scene, you want to take a photograph, are you thinking, I can create something from this, or are you purely looking to record what you've seen? Does that make sense?
Usually, I mean, what I've been doing so far is I first wait for the light, and then I find the subject. That's more how I've been working. Living in Paris, you've got beautiful subjects everywhere. So what I do is I have a motorbike, and whenever I see the sky, which is nice, then I just start driving, and then I follow the clouds with the bike, and then I find the subject, because with the clouds and the sun is going to make the landscape, because there is, you know, nice subjects you've got everywhere, but if the sun is a bit on the left, it's going to be different. Like, for example, there is one famous bridge in Paris which is called the Pont des Arts, you know, where they put these locks, the lovers, they put this lock. It's actually almost fell down recently. So much lock, love locks. That's there. Right. People, they lock their love on the bridge.
I made a comment about it today because someone didn't understand what it was all about, and I explained to them they were love locks, but they got to be careful because I don't think the bridge can take the weight.
Yeah, actually, part of the bridge crashed a couple of months ago. I mean, not the bridge, but the barrier fell down. So now they're kind of stopping it, and it's kind of. Anyways, you have there is another bridge. So you have one bridge called the Pont Neuf, and yet you have the other one, which is the Pont des Arts. It's a beautiful view of Paris, but there's only 1 month per year where the sun actually comes between the Louvre and the building which is over there. There's only 1 month per year. All the rest of the year is so. This is what I do. I look for the light, and then I take the photo, because I have the luxury of living in Paris. Now, if I go to the Grand Canyon, for example, for a week, which happened to me, then I try to do the best that I can with what I have, you know, and I just shoot a lot, early sunshine, the night, the day, you know, and I just try to get to take out the most that I can, because I'm there for 4 days. But when you have in Paris, I have the luxury of living there. I'll come back 16 times to get the right light for one spot. I'll actually make the other thing about Paris, which is unique, probably to the majority of cities in Europe, is the fact that apart from your La Défense area, it is effectively, and Eiffel Tower obviously, it is a low-level city. There are no skyscrapers in the city of Paris, whereas if you take London, for instance, you've got a very built-up and high-rised area around what we term as the financial city of London. Then, of course, we've got Canary Wharf. And even when you start walking down sort of towards the West End, towards the Parliament Square, and then you've still got some high-rise buildings there. So the options that you've got to move around to get the correct light with an interesting sculpture or a point of interest is far more easier for your city because of this low level, which allows obviously the light to come in. Yeah, you're right. Something I really like about Paris, actually. They've kept it low level. Yeah, that's true. It's very true.
So we covered the show, which I'm really pleased because it is an amazing show, and if anyone has never come across it, then well, you must have been living on another planet, but
Thank you.
YouTube, Serge Ramelli. It's an amazing set of tutorials that he gives for free. And
With the raw files
of
for
course,
free,
he's
all
got
you have
courses
to
as well.
Yeah, all you have to do is
Exactly.
subscribe to my newsletters to get the raw files, which then you get a lot of newsletters because I have a marketing genius somehow who does a lot of newsletters. But anyways, you get all the raw files, and some of the raw files are really, from all over the world, are pretty good quality stuff, So you can that people can give a try. And I have a lot of students all over the world that even on very poor country, they have no money, so they don't buy all the paid courses. They just do with the free stuff, but they're doing really well. And so I'm happy about that.
That's a great offer that you give out there, Serge. That's really very generous of you. So we come to the point of my show where I know there's one particular photographer that you want to talk about. He's your favourite of all, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 photographers written down here, and I look for a one-word association with the photographer.
Like you give me the name and
don't know the word. I'll give you the photographer's name, and then you say the word.
Well, I might not know. I'm not huge in photographic culture. I know a few.
If you don't know him, don't worry, because we haven't practiced this bit. We didn't get round to it. So I'm going to kick off with the first one, which is Brassai.
Stairs. Stairs, because stairs.
Stairs.
Yeah, because he made a very famous photo of the stairs of Montmartre in Paris, and that's all over the world. And I've done my version of it. So
lovely. Yeah, Brassai for me, the one is the long winding lane going through Montmartre in the evening with the lamplight shining off the
this one too. Yeah, but the stairs one is very famous.
Yeah. I'm not going to say the next one because I think that may be your favourite. William Egglestone.
Oh no.
You don't know him? Okay,
no.
He's an American street photographer from around about the 60s, one of the first guys to use colour film.
I think I heard the name, but I don't know his work.
Yeah, and William Egglestone, in actual fact, would only take one photograph of one particular area. He'd take a photograph and he'd move on. He wouldn't take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 images. So it's similar to what we were talking about earlier on. How about Gary Winogrand?
I don't know him. I'm sorry.
American street photographer.
You know what? The only street photographers that I know, apart from Henri Cartier-Bresson, is Jay Maisel in New York, which I know pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, let's do Jay Maisel then. What's a one-word association for Jay Maisel?
Fun. I spent a week with him.
Okay.
Very fun.
Yeah, I saw a little excerpt with Scott Kelby out with him. Looked as though it was a bit of fun. Right, I'm going to say Ansel Adams.
Well, he's been a lot of my inspiration on the landscape, at least for the black and white, and all the books I'm doing is really, I've studied a lot his zone system, the way he was retouching photos after the war. Very impressive stuff. A lot of work. He is one of my biggest inspiration.
Okay.
So one word, kindness.
One word, yeah.
A very kind man.
Yes. I was talking to Karen Hutton about Ansel Adams, and I asked her the question, what do you think Ansel Adams would make of all the post-processing items and digital equipment that you've got now? Bearing in mind, he probably was one of the best darkroom manipulators of all time, in my book.
Oh, yes. He was a retoucher. He probably would have, like, a plug-in company today. Or, invented
he probably would do.
He would be McFun and Topaz today.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that people don't realize is that retouching has been around. I had a friend who was actually a retoucher for this very naughty, and she used to tell me what they used to do to retouch photos, and it's a lot of more work. I mean, because we now have the digital, but they used to retouch a lot the photos, a lot.
Yeah, this is not new. What you're doing with the processing is not. It's new in terms of the tools that you've got available, but it's not new with what photographers used to do back in the day. And the other interesting thing is, you're taking the photograph and doing the processing. In the old days, if you go back to the David Baileys and Norman Parkinsons and those sort of photographers, they took the photograph. They didn't do the printing. Sol Leiter, my favourite street photographer of all time, He didn't do any of his printing. He just did the photograph. That's how I want it. Thank you very much indeed. It's a totally different process. I've got a guest on in a couple of weeks' time, an amazing portrait photographer who is trying to make good into the world. He doesn't do, at the moment, he doesn't do his own processing. He does all the photography, gives it to someone else to do the retouching and the way the work goes, and it's outstanding. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. I can't give his name away because I like to do it in secret. But yeah, it's the old style of taking the photograph and giving it to someone who's skilled in that process of that type of work, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, we've timed this just about right. We've come to the end of the show. Serge, I've just got to thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
A little bit of an insight in regards to your future, which wish you all the very best out there. Don't stay out there for too long. Come back for the summer months in Paris.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And continue. I would die if I wouldn't. Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to come back. It's like Valerie. She has to come back to Paris to get her tonic of French, and then on to Normandy. And I think she's back soon again. She's coming back for the autumn, isn't she? With one of her workshops.
Comes often. Yeah, I'm going to do a bit like Valerie. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That's absolutely superb. Okay, so I hope my viewers out there have enjoyed this show. I have. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to Serge. So much to learn. Please watch his videos and take his tutorials, because there's just loads to learn. I'll give you a little example for myself. When I first took a tip from Serge, which was to drop the highlights and increase the shadows. I took the photograph into it. I did just a very simple. And then I did the whites and the blacks, and I studied you. The first time I'd seen your show, I took the photograph into a print competition at my camera club, and it was a big A3 print. I put it up on the easel there, and they all screamed at me from the audience, "Oh, not another HDR photo!" And I said, "No, this is all done in Lightroom." They didn't believe me. Yeah, it was an interior shot. It was an interior shot of one of the chapels in Lille. And
I'll give you a little trick on that. A little trick, because when you do the plus 100 on the blacks and the minus 100 on the highlights, open up shadows and highlights. You do create a bit of HDR look, but then with the blacks and the whites, you get the contrast. But then you can add like a sort of minus clarity instead of a plus clarity, a minus clarity. It's going to give back a natural look to it with still a very nice dynamic range. Just a little.
That's a good little tip. And I'll tell you something which I've just spotted as well. Scott Kelby gave a fantastic little tip using Lightroom how to make pavements wet. Have you seen this at all?
Yeah, I think so, because he showed it to me in Photoshop. It was not with the
photo. It's amazing. Yeah.
A photo from Paris.
I think it was. He did. Yeah, he did mention it's the cobbled pavement, and he said, "Look at this." He was with RC. He got the brush tool, brushed the pavement and the cobblestones and just a little bit of the wall. 100% contrast, 100% clarity, wet pavement. Just stunning, unbelievably stunning. So
I didn't see this one. Absolutely. I knew how you used to do it in Photoshop. That's cool. Well, anyways, thank you all for having me on.
RC did another one, yeah. Yes, as I was saying, thank you very much indeed, Serge. So, I say this at the end of all my shows. It's very important to me because we've touched on it today, one camera, one lens. Guys, when you watch this show and you're going out shooting, leave your camera bag at home. Thank you for watching.